what happened there with the sound. It kind of disappeared on me. This is not a podcast show. I'm not a podcast host, Sean Ongley. Please subscribe to me on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter. It's all very easy. Just see that name up there in the corner, Sean Ongley. I don't switch it up. There's very few of us in this on the good thing about using it. So just search that. Subscribe where it is. And you can also just go to my .com, SeanOngley.com. You can tip me because all I do is free content. That's all I do. And I also have a business you can support called Held Gear. You go to heldgear.com if you need belts, cuffs, or chokers and things like that. Good stuff. All right. And then that brings us to our guest, which I am very excited about because I'm like a new fan, I guess. I discovered him on the Ari Shaffir Skeptic Tank podcast with his Father's Day special, and I was a bit smitten with it. And I got to see him in the midst of the pandemic in the outdoor venue in Royersford, and he had this like Wawa bit that killed for a packed house, and I was just like, I loved that he tapped in on the Wawa consciousness, and so I've been working toward getting to the point where I would ask him to be on the show, and here it is. So I'm very happy to introduce to you Steve Simeone.
How are you, buddy?
All right, man. Good to meet you and everything here.
Nice to meet you. I didn't realize you were at that Soul Joel show in Royersford.
Yeah. I was very it was like a good relief I needed in my life at that moment. And I did reach out to you on Twitter. I think you followed me back at that time.
As soon as anybody mentions Philly, I'm in. I'm like, they're getting a follow back, whatever I can do to help.
That's what I figured it was. I appreciate that. You got to like keep your community together.
Amen.
Go ahead and tell everybody what you're up to, any shows you got coming up, and social media we can find you at.
I'm going to retweet you right now so people can check this out.
Okay, good.
They can watch us live. I'm going to put check us out live. Okay. So in about 2 weeks, I think I'm going to be back in Royersford. It's like the 19th of August. I'm in Royersford. And then Joel, the guy that owns that room, has another room in Stone Harbor on that Sunday, one in Ventnor on Tuesday, and then somewhere on the 24th. So I'm going to be all over South Jersey and Pennsylvania, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, cool. Well, then I best get to one of those things.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Cool. And .coms, anything like that?
I never update my website. It's awesomesteve.com.
There you go. Awesome, Steve.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So I wanted to start with like what it was like growing up out here in Delco. And you know how that influences you, and somehow we'll work it into this Wawa consciousness.
Okay, well, Delco is also the birthplace of Wawa. A lot of people don't realize that, but the first Wawa ever was on McDade Boulevard, not far from where I had my first job at the Comic Universe on McDade Boulevard.
It's like it's the best. It's better than 7-Eleven. It's better than it really is the model for all possible convenience stores.
It's fantastic.
Right.
And like as a little kid,
we're not getting paid by this, by the way.
Oh, you want to hear something cool though? I have a friend of mine that my buddy Frank works for the football team in town, the Philadelphia Eagles, and he saw the Wawa bit. He's like, "Yo, I got to send this to my buddy. He's the president of Wawa." I'm like, "Yo, dude, hook me up. Let me get a free hoagie." But I haven't got anything free. I just love it.
Yeah. Where's the gift cards coming?
Yeah, come on.
In the mail. They're in the mail.
Let's do a Wawa podcast.
But yeah, I mean, like growing up as a kid, like the 7-Eleven and the Street Fighter 2 in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was like back in the 80s and 90s because we're about in the same age bracket, I believe.
I bet I'm way older. And Wawa was, and still is to me, it's a portal to joy. Like it's, as a kid, it meant freedom. It meant that you were not in your neighborhood. You got to taste a little bit of society. Like you could eat something that wasn't from your kitchen or your friend's mom's kitchen. Like if I remember there was a kid, This I won't say his last name, but this kid Chris, and he had a 10-speed bike, and he was a rebel. He didn't care about the boundaries his mom put, like you're allowed to go this far or this far. I don't know, people. I remember that, like when I was allowed to go. You're allowed to go 3 houses, but if I can't see you, that's too far, Stephen. This kid Chris didn't care, and he had a 10-speed, so he could wheel to the local Wawa, and he came back drinking like just. Can you see me?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Chris came back with like a jar of a bottle of soda from Wawa. It was like the nectar of the gods. It was like, you have soda that you bought with your own money from Wawa. And he was like, it's delicious.
Yeah.
So Wawa always meant like something fun. Like, and my biggest Wawa memory has to be baseball cards. Because growing up in Philly, and I've been blessed to live in all different parts of the country, but there's something special about the Philadelphia region. And there's
what is it?
You know what? In all honesty, I was just going to talk about how much spring means. Like when you have to survive a winter and everything's gray and terrible, and the baseball cards would show up when it was still February, but it was a sign of hope that things were going to get better. That spring was around the corner. But to answer your question on a larger scale, Delaware County I learned so much that I didn't even realize I was learning it. Like, and I think that's how you learn the best lessons in life. They become a part of you without you even realizing it. And there I really learned the value of community, the value of hard work, the value of friends. And like people really, that city works its ass off. Like, I don't know what it's like to grow up anywhere else, but like the harder you worked, the more respected you were. And like I grew up in a neighborhood that was like perfectly middle class, is how I would describe it. Like there were people that had money, and then there were people that were just doing whatever they could to stay in that neighborhood. And then there were people that was their starter house. Okay. But let me tell you something. The guys that were attorneys and doctors still mowed their own lawn. They raked their own leaves. Like I knew kids like that was their side hustle. There would be dudes that, were working their way through grad school with a construction business or landscaping. And like, I didn't realize anything was different about that until I went to college in Baltimore, which is a very similar work ethic. But all the kids had cool internships over the summer. And that wasn't, I was like, internship, I have to make as much cash as I can. And I stacked cinder blocks all summer long, which is like a great job coming from Delco. But the college kids, they were like, oh, you had a blue collar job? And I'm like, oh, where I'm from, everybody does. Like you could be a Wall Street trader, but chances are, somebody like somebody you're related to knows how to hang. You know what I mean? It's a different place.
Yeah. It's this is the 80s, right? The
Yeah.
socioeconomic times. I don't know how much has changed because it was always like a production capital. Philadelphia area is a production capital. It was the breadbasket of the world. It was considered the workshop of the world, is the correct term. And that has been replaced with China. That's what people call Shenzhen today. So that transition really started happening in the 80s. So, that pride, though, the workers' pride is very alive in Philly. I think I really had to find my work ethic here too. Like I think I was able to get away with more bullshit out west where I grew up.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
California.
Whereabouts?
Southern California, like Santa Barbara area.
Oh, I love Santa Barbara. I'm going to move this inside so we have a little better light.
I was good. I'm glad you can move it. I was trying to figure out how to tactfully ask you to go like find a lamp or something. But yeah, so I'll talk about myself while you move. So like, Santa Barbara is the opposite of what happened to like Philly. Like everything that a lot of wealth transferred out west.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so Santa Barbara was more quaint and easier for the average Joe in the 80s when I came up there. But we moved to Tucson in the 90s. So I've lived all over the West Coast, though. So
that's cool. How old were you when you moved?
7th, 8th grade. It was 8th grade.
Oh,
Wait,
bro, I'm saying a silent
grade.
prayer for you right now because those years are so tough.
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
alone being the new kid, and
Yeah.
then that barber culture. Like, to me, that's Shangri-La. Like,
Cheers
there's
to
a
that kid, man. That kid is traumatized, and he's trying to still figuring his shit out today.
I'm surprised that kid's not doing stand-up comedy.
I did.
I knew it had to be in there. It had just that level of trauma at that age in life, when like your friends and your peers and what people think of you is everything. I applaud the strength it must have taken to just survive those years, dude.
Yeah. Well, you should also know there's another twist. I'll ask you on the flip side of this twist, because I won't get into it on this show, but I'm a cult survivor. You think Santa Barbara, my parents met in Los Angeles. What might they have been involved with?
Wow.
It's also a Florida connection there. You got it?
No, I'm not.
Scientology.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm not that smart. Like, whatever.
Okay. Or are we playing Jeopardy? Let's stop this game here.
I am no Ken Jennings. I am, if it's not 1980s pro wrestling trivia, I'm probably not your guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember getting pay-per-view wrestling in the house. I think like a lot of like the stories you convey do remind me of my childhood house. It's a working class household.
Yep.
But we have those middle class treats going on. Video games, cable. We're obsessed with media.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We'll get you through. Like my buddy, he's a hysterical comedian. His name's Steve Renazizi. And I remember once he was talking about his wife, and he's like, I don't know if I married the right woman. How could she not love Lionel Richie? I'm like, I love Lionel. He was like, Lionel Richie's everything we listened to in the 80s, so we didn't kill ourselves. Like, you need those little things. And like, to me, that's what I like to build my comedy around. Those little moments, those little vessels of joy, whether it's a pizza getting delivered, a song on the radio, Hulk Hogan coming out of a sleeper hold. Like, there are little things that can really get you through.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like pop music. I don't know. You're delivering us joy back to ourselves. You're just digging it out of ourselves. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I guess because for so many years I didn't feel it.
I want to get the picture of like, because Delco's close to Philly. And Philly, like, I live in North Philly. It's row homes. There's 100 homes on one block, and they're all up against each other. And out west, everybody's got a yard.
Yeah.
So it's a very different lifestyle or like kind of setting for me. But it is interesting to watch how neighbors, like my neighbors, organized, and I believe without permission of the city, a block shutdown. Everybody moved their cars. They opened the fire hydrant and they scrubbed down the streets with their own brooms.
That's Philly.
When I saw them, I was like, I ran out with my broom, and they're like, "Oh, we're already done." I was like, "Oh, I want to
be part of it."
Yeah, right. I do park cleanups and stuff, but I've never seen my block actually like pull together like that, and that was really cool. And it's cleaner now. It actually is cleaner now.
And I think there's something beautiful about that. Like,
that's anarchy. That's proper anarchy, actually. What is the dream of anarchy?
Yeah, like people just working together. I remember, and I still don't know. I don't have any answers, you know. But I remember coming, like, even in Delco, we're not on top of each other. Like, I think Delaware County is like, at least for the generation when I was a kid, like our parents, our grandparents, they worked so hard to get that backyard. They worked so hard to have a driveway.
Yeah.
If they had a car, they didn't have to move it. They didn't have to look for
3 blocks to get home.
Exactly. Yeah. But that sense of community was instilled in me. And I remember when I moved to LA, when I lived in an all Russian neighborhood, I knew my neighbors there, right? Like, because I was the American, and they loved me, and it was great. But then when I moved out to Sherman Oaks, and it was a little more affluent area, nobody talked to each other. And I was like, is this an LA thing, or is this a 2010 thing? I still don't have the answer. I just know
it's a class thing. It's a fear thing.
It could be. I just know, like, when I go to Philly, there are kids that I haven't seen since 3rd grade that I still consider friends. And they will come up to me at shows. And they'll be like, you remember when your mom was a homeroom mom for Mrs. Jeanette and we got Pinocchios? Like, still remember it like it was yesterday, and you're going back 40 years almost. And I'm like,
yeah.
I do remember that. And it's like in my blood. It's like in that, like, that's why, like, what I really wanted to do with that Wawa bit was show how people in Philly do hold the door for each other, that you are a part of a community. And
not always. That's the thing.
So important.
But
you froze up.
Everybody's.
Yeah, now I can hear you fine.
Oh,
so you were saying it's not always that.
Seamlessly,
it's not always that come together
my,
sense of community.
Oh shit! Are you?
I'm here. I'm very impressed that you even know how to do that.
Yeah, I have an upstairs router and a downstairs.
Tangible skills. You have tangible life, and I'm very impressed.
I do. Thank you. I failed at comedy. I flopped out, but I'm developing some real skills. Not that comedy's not a real skill. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with you.
Well, you do a valuable service, and that's why you're on this show. And you're doing me a solid because, I'm always I got to bump my audience, and I got to get exposed out there. So anyway, sorry, we were going back. So were you in, like, you had a yard, not a row home?
Not a row home.
Okay.
No.
Did you have, like, a neighbor sharing one wall?
For the first couple years, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I moved out of that house when I was 7, and I remember all the kids that lived next door. I remember the kids that lived down the block. I remember who gave what on Halloween. You know what I mean? The candy bars and stuff. And then the house,
great memory.
The single family house. I remember the families. I remember the dogs. I remember the kids. And, like, that is, like, a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but it's true. I'm, like, crippled by shyness, and I'm very, very much introverted. And
I don't understand that.
I'm not a fan of social media. Like, but when somebody I went to school with hits me up on social media, it's like, it's real joy. It's like, yes, dude, I totally remember you. And it's awesome.
Yeah, well, you were always very sweet to me on social media, so that's very cool. Maybe there's that little bit of a buffer is good for the introvert, but but then you get yourself on stage, and in a way, I guess I see how the introvert thing works. I'm a little bit that way, but I don't really relate to it. Maybe I don't understand it.
It's interesting because I don't know if I can explain it, but I know I'm not the only one. Like, I know a lot of comedians tend to be reserved off stage. Yeah. I've noticed that with a lot of performers in general, even like athletes, like guys that are like I've known a few martial artists in my time, and, like, they are the last person, like, the dude that's in the cage or the guy that's on the mat or in a boxing ring is not the guy I'm talking to at the Comedy Store. They're, like, so sweet and docile and kind, but then they go out there and it's like they flick a switch. And I think with comedy, it allowed me, like, I'm always afraid I'm going to hurt somebody's feelings, or I'm going to say something wrong, or something, I'm going to be criticized. But I know it's my job. So that ties into that Delco work ethic. It's my job to go out there and try to make that audience laugh. And I'm not being rude. And, like, that's one of the things, like, even on a podcast with you, I get a little nervous.
Wait,
like,
not a podcast.
Not a podcast. But, like, I get nervous when I should talk, not talk. Like, sometimes if I'm in a group, I'll just be quiet. And I'm like, you know what? Let everybody else handle this. But when I'm on stage, what I love about comedy, stand-up in particular, is that it's just me. So if I have to do it. It's like I have permission to do it.
You're like you're a bit of a storyteller comic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got jokes, but a lot of the jokes are structured in the narrative.
Correct.
Yeah, and you kind of have to run the narrative a certain way too.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that came from wanting to be a screenwriter and just procrastinating a lot. So I love storytelling, but sitting in front of a laptop takes a lot of discipline. But when they would just say my name, I had to go out there and do something.
And then you were able to. So do you ever just tell these stories on the fly and kind of find what's funny as you do it?
That's the best.
Yeah.
And it does take a special audience and a special moment to do that. But I would say just about all of my stories were worked out in front of a live audience, one piece at a time. And the more comfortable I am with an audience, the more we can play and experiment. And like if it's a tough crowd, they're going to just get greatest hits. They're going to get stuff that I'm going to try my best to make, like, to the best of my ability. I'm going to use what works. But if it's a fun, awesome crowd, it's kind of like this. We're just improvising in the moment together, and we'll see where it goes. And then I record those sets. But generally, I don't even go back and listen. Generally, I'm like, I remember what worked. And I'll use the stuff that worked and build off that.
Vibing through it.
Uh-huh.
We got a couple people watching. Just inviting anybody that wants to jump in and chat, please do.
Oh, yeah.
If you're watching on Twitter, you can go to YouTube and then jump in the chat there. Anyway, so 80s Delco. How much did you go into Philly? Did you get on your bikes? Was it like, because like I know I was going out to like the Drexel Hill, Clifton Heights area a lot recently. That's Delco, right?
That's 100% Delco.
Yeah. So yeah, this totally bikeable. It's just a ride. But it's a little challenging. Philly's roads are kind of wild.
Yeah, like as a kid, like I was really happy when my whole world was bike distance from my front door.
Yeah, and that gets bigger as you get older.
Yes. So
and then you get a car.
Yeah, and I didn't do much. Like when my dad, the reasons why we went into Philly when I was a kid was all about food. And it was to get the most delicious stuff in the city. It was food, and then also to buy certain things that you couldn't buy in the suburbs. Like there was a place on Arch Street in Philly has like a fantastic Chinatown. And back in the 80s, they used to advertise. I don't know why a chubby 12-year-old thought I had what it took to be a ninja, but I was obsessed with martial arts and ninjas. And there was a place that would advertise, like in the back of Black Belt magazine, or there was an actual magazine in the 80s me and my brothers were obsessed with. It was called Soldier of Fortune magazine. And it was because you could order fireworks catalogs out of the back of it. And you could also order martial arts weapons. And there was a place in Philly called Asia World of Martial Arts that so many guys of my generation, it was like a manhood. The passage in the manhood was convincing an adult. In my case, thank God my dad was awesome and drove us to Arch Street so we could buy martial arts weapons. Like it was to buy like ninja stars, nunchucks. I never had enough money for a sword, but I definitely wanted one.
Yeah.
And then
how many kids want swords?
Dude, they're awesome.
Yeah. Your sword phase.
Yes. And the throwing stars, like weapons of death. How cool is that?
Like, are you at the point where you can just whimsically purchase those sorts of things now?
You know what? You would think that I would, like, I will say this. One of the ways I try to use, one of the ways I guess I try to interject more joy into my life is that I go, what would the 12-year-old version of me be happy with my life right now? And what would the 12-year-old version of me want to go celebrate? Does that make sense? So now, didn't go into the city much as a kid. It was always an adventure. It was a treat. And it was usually around sandwiches or baked goods. I would say it was either sports or food, and the rare occasion contraband, ninja stars, firecrackers. But 90% of the trips were probably food, another 10% for sports and stuff like that. And then when I got into college, I went to school in Baltimore and got exposed to the city a little bit more, that city. And then I'm like, wait, I'm from Philly. What does Philly have to offer? And then I worked in the city before moving to LA. I worked in South Philly I actually worked for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was literally a dream come true.
What was the job?
My first job, it was awesome. Like how God just would sort of take care of me. I had a friend of mine who was a retired Philadelphia homicide detective. He was the coolest. He was a gold shield. And he used to say, he's like, you know what, Steve? They say the good Lord takes care of children, drunks, and idiots. So that means he's got you covered in all three bases. Such a moron.
Yeah.
I probably drank away every paycheck. I was like 27. And I quit. I had a corporate job. Didn't vibe with me.
Yeah.
I thought I would go to law school. And I actually wound up not going to law school. And I found an intern.
Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah.
Wow.
I started off. What?
How was? So I meant to ask you that earlier. What was your religious upbringing like?
Devout Roman Catholic.
Devout Roman Catholic. Wow.
Yeah, because we're Irish and Italian, so both sides just Catholicism everywhere.
Yeah, that's a good combo of Catholicism.
Mm-hmm. So and I didn't understand what any of that really meant in terms of just cultivating peace. You know, as a kid, and I don't think I was taught this specifically, but how I interpreted it, it was like it was more strict than it needed to be. And it was now as an adult, people are like, wait, you're a Catholic? I'm like, yeah. They're like, but you love everybody. I'm like, yeah, well, that's the whole point to it. Like, just I try to live in a
it's an unfortunate
it is unfortunate that people
are like, you're religious. What? You're not a dickhead.
Right. Like the one person you talked about, Ari Shafir and his podcast, like that'll come up often when we talk. And he was like, he's been championing me for years now. And maybe I have the courage now or the time. But he's like, you should put your version of how you do it out there. Because he was like, there's nothing judgmental in you. You just love people. And I found that when you live that way, you do get this peace. And as a new man, I just didn't have the peace. And
I'm new to that.
To California. That's what made me get up on stage. That's what made me waste every paycheck I had at a bar. Yeah. That's what I was so concerned what people thought about me. And now I'm just like, hey man, here's the hug. That's all I got. That's it.
Yeah, I'm more and more becoming that person too. And life's a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know, man. Like I have a real hard time. I don't work in any groups. There's no group that fits me, right? Because I could get offended by everything that's going on at this point because I have friends on every side of the spectrum across the board in every walk of life.
Yep.
And so everybody's talking shit on all my friends. And some of my friends might not understand who I associate with.
Yeah.
And then it's like, sometimes I'm afraid that people will think I just can't. I just got to let it go. I believe in myself. I believe that I walk the right life, and I increasingly treat people. I have like a self-correcting mechanism to be a better person.
That's awesome.
But although I've been an asshole and I've been a real short fuse, and as you work through things, you realize that you're kind of anything that you did that was abusive to others was because you were abusing yourself. It was like there's something in there that you weren't in your heart that you weren't getting through.
100% so.
I never really found solace in the idea of Christ or Jesus, but it's like that's creeping in there. But the thing is that I've always been into everything. So I'm a yoga practicing Buddhist who loves Christ.
Yeah.
Survivor.
There's a guy named Thomas Merton. He was a Catholic monk that took Buddhism and worked with that. And it's just, they
go great together, dude. It's like ham and cheese. it's like, yeah, it's just, they work well together. I promise.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not smart enough to preach to people, so I just try to do it with my smile, and I try to do it with, you know, if you wash people's feet and feed them and let everybody know that they're not, how can I say this? There's a great organization in Los Angeles. It was actually started by a Catholic priest. It's called Homeboy Industries, where they sort of provide a loving environment for people that are currently in street gangs or need job skills when they return to society from prison. And Father Boyle has this great, I thought, like, I was like, oh yeah, I always sort of thought this. And then I heard, you ever hear somebody take one of your thoughts and just make it like crystallize it and make it better? You're like, oh yeah, that's it. And he was like, there's no us and them, there's only us.
Yeah.
There's just this circle of compassion that we're all connected to. And I'm like, yeah, that's
yeah.
Right.
You know, like I think it was around 2014 or 15 that I started. I heard this idea, or actually I heard it probably like 2012. Muhammad Ali said "me, we," and some believe that should be the shortest poem and be called the shortest poem and declared as such. And I'm down with that. So I think it's a beautiful poem, and I put that on. I kind of tried to make a meme with it. It failed, didn't go anywhere. I tried to use it. I never found a place for it, and then I used it in my Twitter headline, and then it changed meaning when the pronouns came about. So I actually stopped using it. And then I kind of put that back up there when the pronouns started coming around. And it's a very light troll. It's a very light troll, but it is a troll on the idea because I just think like it. I've always thought of things as me and we. Like I probably thought too much in terms of we sometimes and didn't take care of me. But
Yeah,
I do.
I've run into problems with boundaries and where can I help and let somebody help. But honestly, I don't care.
Do you get burned sometimes helping people?
I burn myself sometimes where I think I am God, and I think I can really do more than I really can do.
You're like, yeah. You ever think you're Neo? You ever think you're?
Yeah. That's why I've never been to a psychic because I'm afraid they'll go, "You're the chosen one." I'm like, I don't know, I'm not.
Yeah. You're the oracle.
Dude, and whenever I start to overthink stuff, like, oh, who cares? And I just go on and I just try to smile and hold a door and share my sandwich. Like, I really think, like, I boil everything.
It's very Buddhist, right? I feel like that's very Buddhist in a way.
Yeah, and also, like, the Gospels, right?
Yeah.
Like, like, I was at church a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, we lost everybody because we started talking about religion.
I know, isn't that hysterical? It's just, I have a bit on that now. Where I was in Denver like a month ago, and it was one of those great audiences where you could just sort of flow with them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even know if I should even mention Jesus to the crowd. And then I was like, wait a second, because I could feel them pulling back. I go, on this stage, a comedian could say anything. They could talk about kicking an old lady down a flight of steps, and you guys would laugh and you would say, this guy's a great artist. But the second I say, like, Jesus gave us some great lessons, I'm the jerk. Like, come on, dude. Like, let's just be more loving. Let's be more
It's
kind.
weird. It's weird. So Ari suggested that you do something like Christian. He's doing Jew, right? Is kind of what he's talking about? Like you should do Christian or something?
To do like a podcast. I don't feel
okay.
qualified to do it. Does that make sense? But I do feel like, I don't know. I know I'm getting closer to something.
Have you ever done a podcast of your own?
Yeah, I did one up until the pandemic, and I called it Good Times. And what I wanted to focus on were those little moments that you can look back in your life that'll still give you joy now. And it was kind of like an outgrowth of what would happen. Like, I am shy, and I'm always thrilled when somebody will talk to me after a show. You know what I mean? Like they're like, "Whoa, dude, that was awesome." And after these shows, when I started to make my stand up more personal and talk about stories, do more storytelling, people would come up to me with their stories, and there was like this connection between us. And I'm like, "Whoa, everybody's had these moments of silliness, craziness, joy, whatever." And I wanted to build a podcast on that. It was kind of like the opposite of that Charles Bukowski poem about the shoelace, where he talks about like that's how people wind up in the madhouse. It's not the big stuff in life, we can handle that, but it's when you go bend over to tie your shoe and it snaps, the shoelace snaps, and that's when it's over. You're done. And I went, if that's true for the negative stuff, it's also true for the positive stuff. You know what I mean? Like if you just
I didn't fully grasp it.
okay, so Charles Bukowski's a poet.
Right, yeah.
He's got a poem, and I'll paraphrase it. But he was like, death of a loved one, bankruptcy, the big disappointments in life were built to handle that stuff. He was like, but what drives people crazy and sends people to the loony bin is when they go to bend over and tie their shoe and their shoelace.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
You know what I mean? Like it's just the
I got you.
timing of it. It's just the little thing that doesn't seem like much. That's just not this all sucks.
Yeah.
And I believe the opposite of that's true.
Yeah.
I believe that like I'm a big fan of surprise donuts. That doesn't sound like much, but like when I had jobs that I hated, when you walk into the kitchen and there's just donuts and you're like, wait, what? Can anybody have one of these? And they're like, yeah, Frank went and he got donuts for everybody. And you're like, he got them from the Amish place, the best donuts in the city. It's not even my birthday and I can just have one. They're like, yeah, dude, take two. And I'm like, don't mind if I do. And like, that's it. That's it. And I try to like, I try to live my life that way. I try to be like I didn't come up with a New Year's resolution this year because I'm still working on last year's. And last year I wanted to be that person a stranger would meet over the course of their day. That, as Joey Diaz would say, like I've learned so much from my comedian friends, and I've learned a lot from Ari. I learned a lot from Uncle Joey. And Uncle Joey would always say stuff like, try to make somebody's day. Like he's so good at the 3-minute, 2-minute phone call. Uncle Joey must check in with 1,000 people. He's so good at figuring out where you are in your life, if you need anything, and most important, that he loves you. I'm like, yes. And he was like, you got to make people's day, Steve Simeone. You have that ability. You have to go out there and make somebody's day. And I tried to make that my New Year's resolution. Like interact with strangers in a way where you're instilling hope.
Yeah. How do you do that, dude? I mean, like, I'm thinking, wait, sorry, say that again.
Sometimes it's just being quiet.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it's just like, I'm not going to respond to this, or I'm going to respond with a smile. Sometimes, I mean, dude, there's so much more I would like to share, but I also don't want people to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I'm going to share something. Like, who knows how many people are watching this? But I'm going to share it. I was in the grocery store about 6 months ago. No, it was before Christmas, maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago. And there was a gentleman in the grocery store. There was a 90s rap group that had like one hit. They were called the Booyah Tribe. They were like these Samoan dudes that were covered in tattoos, that had their hair braided, whatever. I'm in line at the deli counter, and out of my peripheral, I see a guy that was very intimidating. And I really felt the Holy Spirit just talk to me. And it was like, Steve, you have to tell that person that I love them. And I was like, right now? He was like, you have to let them know that I love them and I have a special plan for their life. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, okay. And he was like, no, you got to do it. So I'm in line at the deli counter. Then this guy's phone rings. He's on the phone with his daughter. That's all I got. Something about a baby. This guy was going to be a grandfather. So it's just like, hey, sir, I know this is going to sound crazy, but God wants you to know that he loves you. And the guy's face just went, and he smiled and he went, I know. And I went, bro, the Holy Spirit just put this on me. And he was like, it's all real. And I went, he loves you and he's got a special plan for your life. And I could see the tears. And he looked at me and he was like, you have no idea what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's pretty wild.
It felt really good.
You brought it deeper than I was going to go with it. I was going more analytic. I was starting to think you developed a personality where you could remain positive. You were toughened up somehow. But I suppose if you're just getting direct transmissions from the mothership, then
every once in a while, not always, but often.
But you had brothers growing up, yeah?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You've talked about that in your stand-up a lot, for sure. Yeah. No. How many? Just one? Or
I have an older brother and a younger brother.
Oh, so, right in the middle brother.
Mm-hmm.
Sisters?
Nope.
Okay.
And then like
boys, your mom must be crazy.
Oh, our house was nuts. Like we grew up like it was kind of like Malcolm in the Middle. Like it was the 80s. Kids were way more independent than they are now. We're going into Philly to buy weapons and fireworks. We're building ramps, exploring in woods. It was chaos. I remember there was like 1, 2, 3, like 4 little girls, maybe 5 in our neighborhood. And they weren't allowed to come out and play with us because like it was chaos. Like we would build a ramp, somebody would get hurt on the ramp and everybody would just run so nobody got in trouble. Kids would climb trees and we'd throw stuff at them to see if we could make them fall out of a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, little boys.
Well, I mean, I grew up with one sister, so I don't feel like I got the and I didn't have the cousins. You have cousins all around?
As I would like, man. Not really. Like for being Italian and Irish, you would think I'd have 100 cousins. That was like the generation, my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation. And I think I would like to see big families come back. I think it makes people cool. And it definitely gives people awesome stories. You don't
have a family of your own? Last time at the show, you said, you said you were up there. You're gonna find yourself a good, plain
chubby
girl.
Yeah, that's what I was in Philly. Yeah, a chubby 6.
You're on the mission. Didn't happen. Huh?
I'm dating somebody now. It's kind of awesome. She's not a chubby 6, but she knows how to bake.
But
baking to me is like the joke I wrote. I didn't even think it was a joke, but I just did shows with Tony Hinchcliffe, and he's like, "Dude, that line's hysterical." And I'm like, I said it twice, but I'm like, "How's baking? You take 2 powders and you turn it into a cookie. How's that different than being a wizard?" You know?
Yeah, you're a chemist as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I don't bake. I do a lot of my own cooking. I'm a very solid bachelor, but I am thinking about the family thing. I'm about to be 40. Yeah. We are in the same age bracket. And I'm surely you're like, because you want to do those things. You want to do go-karts with your kids, right? You want to do that kind of stuff, right? You want to play baseball or whatever with them.
I think that's the most fun stuff. Like the premise, I haven't really worked it out yet, but I think it's honest. And I think I've been doing comedy long enough now where I think I can make it funny. But the premise I want to work with, maybe for like the next hour of material, is that the best thing that ever happened to me was that none of my dreams came true. And I think people can relate to that. And it's like, I moved out to Los Angeles in the year 2000, really wanting to become rich and famous, thinking that that's what was of value.
What is that bug? What is that demon that creeps in there that makes you think that this is nothing wrong with having an audience? I want an audience. I want a comfortable enough audience that I can do what I do here and you know.
Yeah, make a living. You deserve that. It's hard. Everybody else goes to work and they get paid. You should be able to get paid and have a job.
It has to be, I practice the value for value. So like, it's got to be valuable to people. Otherwise, and if not, I mean, the live streams are just fun and it's an opportunity to talk to people.
Yep.
So it's worth it just to do it. But yeah, to take it to the next step, I would love to, get there someday. And
Yep.
I'm midlife, doing it again. I've tried to do, I lived in LA for a couple of years, moved to Portland because I felt like Portland was actually a better opportunity. And it kind of was. I lived quite a life there. It's still kind of feeding, it's still sort of reverberating the connections and everything that I built from it. So Portland was different than LA. And I guess I wasn't chasing the full on rock star dream by the time I moved to Portland, because I knew that wasn't going to happen in Portland. I knew it would be like more like indie level.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted to be Kurt Cobain. I wanted to be Eddie Vedder. I wanted to be all that when I was younger. What is that bug? Do you think it's just media conditioning? And now that you're older and you're actually successful and closer to that level than maybe you ever would have thought. I guess when you were a kid, did you think you were just going to be massive? You were going to be. Did you want to be a comic as a kid? I'll leave you on that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
And who was it that made you crazy at that time?
Oh, so many of them. Like, I can't, like, in hindsight, that's how I know I was influenced by, everybody. But, like, the big ones, when I was the first comedian I saw where I was like, whoa, was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, Delirious, Eddie Murphy Raw, and then his film career and what he did on Saturday Night Live. Like, Eddie Murphy was just a force. And then, but at the same time, like, it was Eddie Murphy, it was Bill Cosby. My parents were so cool. They'd let me watch Richard Pryor. They'd let me watch George Carlin. But I remember seeing, I saved up to buy money. I saved up my own money to buy a TV when I was 8 years old. And I finally had enough money to do it when I was 9 years old. And I shared a bedroom with my little brother, and I would throw the blanket over the TV so he wouldn't stay awake. And I put an earpiece in, and I would watch The Tonight Show for when the stand-up comedians came out. And I remember being blown away by somebody like Stephen Wright, whose approach to comedy.
Yeah.
You'll never see Stephen Wright's type of comedy in what I do, but I loved him.
Right. Yeah. How did you even understand it at that time?
I don't know. I just always got comedy.
Yeah.
Got it. And I loved it. And I never thought it was a skill. I never thought I thought I would move to LA and maybe do some stand-up, but being a writer, producer sounded like a more grown-up job and an easier to obtain.
I went down that same rabbit hole because I went to audio engineering school. I also looked up to producers. I still do. I still think that essentially that's what I believe that I am. That is like my actual, like, my primary skill is producing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And
getting from A to C is like something that I do, and I've done it a million ways in a different million ways. Like, so,
that's a very rare skill, though.
But I never got to be a great music producer or even great audio engineer. I'm pretty good at that, but I'm not great at it. But I guess that was like the thought that was like, oh, this is a more practical thing to do, but it wasn't fully my heart, you know.
It was adjacent to what you wanted to do.
Right.
And like, through whatever the grace of God, nothing worked out. I remember having to make, like, I was able to work at the Comedy Store. Now, granted, it was just $25 a night. That's how poor I was. But I was able to make $25 a night and watch the greatest comedians in the world develop and I was like, I knew I could do it, but through the circumstances of my life, it was my only option, at least how I perceived it. And to your point, like, where does that desire to become like famous and rich? I think a lot of that is programming. And I think it's even worse for this current generation than it was for my generation or your generation. Like, it's
What are
sad.
they?
People don't feel they have value. And I think that's why people are so mean to each other.
Yeah. That's something that Tripoli points out a lot on his show, that the word programming
I agree.
that's what they call television. It's programming.
And I love Sam Tripoli with all my heart. I
Good.
love him.
Yeah, he was nice enough to bring me on his Patreon a couple times. Supposed to be on Zero, but he didn't use it for that. Have you been on Zero? Seems like you'd be a great guest, just talking about all your
wanting
religious
me
stuff.
to go on and do different stuff when I'm in LA. We'll link up, but I'm just fortunate to call Sam a friend. You know, like,
Yeah.
He's awesome. And I'm so proud of what he's built.
Yeah, he's followed his heart, and it's worked.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to do.
That's what we're all trying to do, right?
Well, most of us are compromising our heart, compromising our whole selves, and that's what leads us into trouble. Plan after plan. I can't even remember. I've been reading a book that, like, it's full of religious scripture and poems and stuff, mostly from the East, but it starts with biblical stuff. I can't remember if it was from Bhagavad Gita or the Bible, but it was like, basically, when you're not devoted single-pointedly, you go from plan to plan. It's all in your head. You're trying to you're trying to create your own future. You're trying to create your own purpose. Unfortunately, you don't really have that, is what I've come to learn.
That's surrender. Like, I realized I was driving myself crazy where I was trying to play detective with God. Where I'm like, God, this happened, so this could happen. That means this might happen.
Right.
And I went, whatever, your plans are always better. Just that's for your love and this need.
Can I figure out your plan?
Like I'm a safe cracker with God.
I think I got his encryption. But you know what was interesting? I got really into the Matrix lately.
So good.
The Matrix ends with, so he absorbs the Oracle and he becomes the all-knowing Agent Smith, right? But the fact of his all-knowing fucks him up, and then he actually sets his own trap.
I have to go back and rewatch it.
You should watch it all again. You know why I got into it? Because I watched it on the plane. The new one was on the plane. I was like, oh wow, this is cool. I didn't think you'd get a brand new movie on the plane. So I watched it. And I thought it'd suck. And I was always looking for things to suck about it. Until I had to admit, that's kind of how I watch things. Like, so much media sucks.
You're like, let me tell you why this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, and if it, and if you really pick it apart and you can't find enough that sucks about it, then it is good.
Dude, I'm going to go on record right now. I'm a huge Keanu Reeves fan. Huge. I got, like, you read all that stuff about him, like about how he's giving and kind, and the man suffered every way a soul can suffer, but it's only made him more loving and compassionate. I remember once him walking through a restaurant I was in. He was awesome. He went over to every table like Rocky in that Creed movie where he's, or Rocky 6, the Rocky Balboa one where he's like glad handing everybody. That's what Keanu Reeves was doing. He's awesome. Yeah. And then I'm going to go back and rewatch The Matrix, but dude, those John Wick movies, talk about a throwback to like 80s fantastic action movie.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
All right. I'll make a deal with you. I'll watch John Wick because I haven't watched those.
It's so good, dude.
And then you'll watch Matrix.
Yeah, let's do it. And we'll circle back when I'm in Philly.
Yeah, there you go. Groovy. But yeah, I felt like there was somewhere else I was going with that. But I don't know. It's been an interesting conversation so far. I always try to like thread it biographically, and it always goes off the rails, but that's okay because that's kind of what I do anyway.
That's when you were talking about stand-up comedy. That's how I sort of plan a set. Yeah. Where like I'll think I know what I'm going to do, but then you just jump in the moment with that audience, and that's the good stuff. Like this conversation's been awesome.
Good. I'm glad you feel that way. It does feel like it's reaching a crescendo. I could keep pushing, but Maybe we leave. Yeah, we'll just do it again.
Yeah.
And remind me and the audience when you're going to be here in the Philly area.
I think it's like August 19th through the 24th. There's 4 different shows at 4 different venues, and you can go to souljoles.com.
And they're all through there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah. He's building an empire.
He's doing something right.
Yeah.
He kept comedy going when I think he was the only venue on the East Coast during the pandemic. So doing a good thing.
Huh. I saw you and Ari there. That's who I've seen there. So that's it.
I'm honored that you saw, because I think Ari's like one of the best to ever do it. So
yeah,
he's my friend. Like that's why, like that's the God I believe in. Like my friends are the funniest people ever. And for a chubby kid that grew up in Delaware County, they used to stay up late at night watching comedians. That like anytime my phone rings, it could be Joey Diaz or Bill Burr or Ari Shaffir or something. I'm like, who am I? This is awesome.
Yeah, I know. I mean, how do you think?
What's
Yeah,
that?
I feel that way too. I have some friends that are successful from Portland and stuff, and I've known a lot of people that came up and just being able to reach out to you and from you it'll go to the next person. It's a step. It's like I don't have very many followers. You didn't worry about that. What I find is if you reach out, then people tend to want to do stuff like and you don't, I guess if anybody takes anything from this conversation, I hope it's the idea that I don't know, that you can live a better life, just be positive. I'm really struggling with that. I think I wanted to explore it maybe just one more second. I theorize that you with your brothers, it toughens you up a little bit, but also you do just have that sense of purpose. And I don't know how to teach anybody to find that. Do you have any way?
Yeah. I think what's important, and I don't know where this is, I have to say this though. You don't have to earn love. It's nothing earned. There's no worthiness to it. It's a gift that just is. And I think anybody that wants to explore Christianity or a relationship with God or just be happier, just own that, man, that love is. And love wants to love you. And you don't need to earn it. Don't worry about being worthy. Because I think in my brain, I wasted a lot of years trying to be worthy of it. And I think that's what sort of put me on my hero's journey, so to speak. Like I wanted to be lovable instead of just being.
Yeah. All right. That's a good ending right there. I appreciate that.
I love you, Sean. This was awesome.
I love you, dude.
Let's eat something delicious the next time I'm in Philly.
Word.
That's it.
Yeah, I will definitely catch up with you. I hope everybody that manages to get to this video catches up with you too, and we'll all go get a hoagie together.
Let's do it.
We'll all open the door for each other at the Wawa.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, love you, dude. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right, how do you like that? I truly am touched that I can just reach out to someone like that, and they'll hang out. So I'm working on living the dream. I've already lived the dream. I really have already lived the dream. I'm not a wealthy man, but I am full of gratitude for the bit of wealth that I have, and the bit of health and the bit of intelligence that I have to pull it through and get through this life. And man, I didn't expect to do such a spiritual type conversation with Steve today, but that's where it went, and I dig it. Hope you dug it, and I'm gonna let you go and remind you. Oh, Steve just joined again. All right, take care, everybody. Be happy.